Hi, I'm Carrie Stacy from Stacy International. I'm a CPA, a CVA, which is a business valuator, and I'm a CPA in Canada. I specialize in helping dealers sell their dealerships. I do business valuations for all purposes and all industries. And I do a little consulting to help dealers reach their financial goals, get their results where they need to be. Today, we're going to talk about benchmarking, and why it's so important both today and for that exit someday. So what is a benchmark? A benchmark is just typically an industry average or a norm for any relevant metric to your industry. So, and many of the benchmarks cross industries, and you'll see more about that in a minute. Often they're proven to be the formula for success. If you want to make chocolate chip cookies, you got to put this much flour, this much sugar, this many eggs. To make the right bottom line that's sustainable, you need to have this much personnel, this much advertising. You need to do your standard jobs in this much time. And what I've found is business owners who use their benchmarks are more successful than business owners who don't watch their numbers. And they grade their performance. It's like their own personal report card. And I'm going to tell you, when I was in my first dealership, not far into it, somebody quit. And I'm standing in my showroom and I'm thinking, okay, so should I replace this guy? How many people should I have? How much labor money should I be spending? What's the going rate? What's the number of people that I need to do this business? And so, I looked around, and of course, we don't get that. Lots of franchises teach their franchisees those things to become a franchisee. In our dealership world, that's not the case. So I looked around and I found Spader's Total Management One, and this is my plug for them. Spader's Total Management One saved my dealerships, made me profitable, and I can't even tell you how much easier it is when you actually know where your numbers should be and you start managing to those numbers. It is something I recommend to every dealer who crosses my path. And I'll recommend it to you. If you haven't taken Total Management One, I encourage you to go take it. It is the manual to success. And beyond that, we can help you with your benchmarks as well. So what's the most important benchmark? Well, there's lots of benchmarks out there in our industry from senior management level. There's 4 or 5 that matter. There's your personnel spend, your advertising spend, occupancy costs, variable costs, and then unique to the dealership business is floor plan interest. But what's the one benchmark that everyone in and around every business cares about? How much money does your business make? It's what you're in it for. You get into business to make money. People lend you money based on how much money you make. People buy your business based on how much money you make. It's the reason that we're here. All the other benchmarks drive that number. So it's important to watch them all. But at the end of the day, how much money you take home is the reason you're there. So how do we measure that profit? If one business is making $500,000 a year and the other dealer is making $500,000 a year, are they both performing well? Well, you can't tell by looking at the dollars. So what we do is we look at a percent of revenue. So that is, what's your cash flow or net income as a good proxy for it, divided by your revenue. That's your percentage of revenue. And that's the number that you want to watch, because that's what you get. That's what your buyers, your bankers, your investors, your lenders, that's what everyone's looking at. And I'm going to tell you an interesting story. It's also a sign of somebody who knows their numbers. When I was selling one of my dealerships, this guy came knocking on the door. He wanted to buy it, and he already had a dealership. And he was telling me how successful he was going to be and how it was going to be a slam dunk to buy my dealership. And oh, boy, was he great. So I turned to him and I asked him one simple question. What's your net as a percentage of your revenue? And he didn't know. So I knew right then, A, he wasn't as successful as he was telling me, and B, really questioned whether he was successful at all. And in the end, of course, when he did try to get approval to buy a second dealership, he was turned down. The floor plan company said, no, there's no way he's able to buy a second dealership. So look at that number, watch for it, monitor it, because it really is the driver. So let's look at one of the benefits. So if we have a $5 million company making 500,000, it's a 10% of revenue. Company B making $10 million with $500,000 cash flow, that's a 5% bottom line. And we use the percent because now we can see which company is doing better. Company A is doing much better. It's more efficient, it's better run, they're making better use of their people, their time, their labor hours, and getting more out of that dealership. So what is the industry average net income or cash flow? Well, based on my databases and my experience, boat dealerships tend to be in the 5 to 10% of total revenue range. And lately we're seeing a lot of dealerships well above 10%, like 12, 13% of revenue. So it's possible, work towards it. A 5% bottom line is a tough place to live. You don't have a lot of flexibility. You don't have the opportunity to take advantage of opportunities when they arise. It's also a reason you want to have that bottom line is to weather a downturn or a bad day. And, the last few years have been crazy, but, downturns come. Like right now, I'm seeing a lot of financial statements where 2019 was a tough year for a lot of dealers. And there was really no news about it. For some reason, it was just a tough year. So those dealers that were performing at benchmark, watching their numbers, were able to make changes and adjust for that and keep that bottom line consistent. So if you're watching your numbers, target 10%. Most of the boat dealerships can do it. Tracker dealerships have a tougher time because their pricing is set. But consistently, I see tracker dealers at 7.7%. So it's very interesting. They're all the same. So marinas, some of you have marinas attached to your boat dealerships. You want to look at them separately if you can, and I would urge you and call me if you need help setting up your system so you can do it. Marinas net is much higher. It can be 10% to up to 40%, and each marina is different, whether you have a lot of land that you own or lease or however your business model works, but we'll find you the benchmark for your business. And how does that affect your selling price? So your selling price or your value, whether you're trying to borrow some money to expand today, your banker's looking at it, whether you're thinking about bringing a partner in or getting rid of a partner, that value of your dealership is driven by estimating what someone would pay for your dealership. It's called the fair market value standard. And a small increase at the bottom, your value is typically a multiple of your cash flow. And maybe we're including different things, and there's a long story that goes with that. We'll talk about that on a different segment. But say, for example, you're looking at a 3 times multiple or a 33% rate of return. An increase of just $100,000 on your bottom line will drive that value up by $300,000. So watch this, do what you can to make it, to drive that bottom line up. Every little bit will help you all along the way when you need to rely on your value. I met a dealer not long ago, and he had decided to sell his dealership, and he was sure it was worth here. And lo and behold, the poor guy, he was devastated to find out that it was worth $1 million less than he thought it was. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of retirement fund gone. And all of the issues, he was engaged, he was happy, he had good staff, he had good location, he had good boat lines. all of it was just because he hadn't looked at it early on and started making changes and driving to those benchmarks. So find out your benchmarks, monitor them, and drive your results to match them. Monitor benchmarks regularly. Manage to those benchmarks. Make it part of your monthly review. So set up your income statement grouped in those groups that fit your benchmarks. And then when you're off a little, start looking at your shop floor and asking why. What can I do different here to get that cost back where it needs to be? And sometimes it's not just about cutting costs. Sometimes it's about increasing revenue. You know, if your people are not so busy, maybe it's about looking at your pricing and getting your pricing up. And especially lately, we've seen industry wages rising, and lots of people are just, you know, you're going along and you're noticing the wages going up, but we haven't adjusted our pricing models up. And so make sure you're adjusting your pricing model to match your wages and make sure that you're covering those, because if your people are stretched out, it's not good for your customers. So it might also be other things, but make sure that you're doing that monthly review, at least quarterly. Monthly's better, and annually if nothing else, but do your benchmarking, look at where you're at to your benchmarks. Moving money around doesn't help. I find costs squirreled away in all different categories just to, I don't know, feel better about our own results. But it's better to face it and then start looking for answers to get yourself in that target zone so you can end well. You never know when it's going to happen. So if you need help with any sort of benchmarking, we offer a benchmarking with recommendations along with monthly, quarterly, or annual business review with you, and assistance with strategic planning and changing direction if you need it, a little help getting where you want to go. So thank you so much, and appreciate your joining me today. And there we go. Thank you.